Howdy folks, my name is Saoirse the Vixen and welcome back to Flight Sim 2020. Now you might be wondering, is the epic music in this intro necessary? And I think for this particular one, it absolutely is. It's May 1st, 1952, and we are on the inaugural flight of the Pan American World Airways Rainbow, or Flight 70, from New York to London. This is the very first time that a tourist class or economy class existed for transatlantic flight. Its importance really can't be understated, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more once we get into the air. We're once again in the DC-6B, and this is actually the first ever DC-6B for Pan American, called the Clipper Liberty Bell. So we're going to get started up, get pushed back from the gate, we'll get out of here, and we'll talk a little bit more about why the Rainbow was so important.
Pumps on low. Fuel selector and crossfeed. Main tanks and crossfeed off. Autopilot and carb heat. Off and cold. Hydraulic system. Down, forward, pressure and quantity checked. Okay. Flaps 20. Stabilize. Stabilized. Cal flaps. Cal flaps. Cal flaps set. Full power, please. Going full power. Lights up. Lights up. Flaps going up. Retail power. Setting retail power 48 inches, 2600 RPM.
Alright, so takeoff went successfully. I did not see anything pop up that's going to be a concern. We've got clear skies all the way from here to the Atlantic, so I figured now would be a really good time to talk about the rainbow and why I think it was as important as it was. The rainbow was the culmination of 7 long years of negotiating and haggling and cajoling and politicking. It was a very hard-fought battle. Now, to understand the origins of this, we have to go back to 1945 and the foundation of the International Air Transport Association, or the IATA. The IATA was formed as a means to kind of keep competition from basically interfering with how business was done. It was a way to kind of spread out all of the fares and all of the money among all of the major carriers. And basically, it was a way to kind of keep the rich and the well-to-do in the air, and, well, the rest of us could just take buses for all they cared. Now, Mr. Juan Trippe, the CEO and the founder of Pan American, saw an opportunity because he realized that the future of this industry was going to rely on millions of travelers and not just a small handful. He wanted to bring intercontinental, international air travel to the masses, to the middle class. And so he proposed slashing his transatlantic fares to $256. Now, this was a time when a one-way fare was $375. Now, to us, that might not seem like a significant gap, a significant change. Back then, it really, really was. And the IATA and all of the other carriers that were involved with it said no. It was not going to happen. Just absolutely not going to happen. We're not going to do that. And by 1952, however, the writing was on the wall. And everybody in the IATA knew that this was going to be the way the future was going. It was simply just, there was no, you could not keep the masses from flying for too long. And so, May 1st, 1952, was the very first day of the tourist class, or economy class, for transatlantic flight. And Pan Am was almost the first to do it. They were beaten by half an hour by TWA and El Al, the Israeli airline. Under these new regulations, an economy class ticket, or a tourist class ticket, round trip from New York to London was $486. Now, remember, a one-way ticket used to be $375. Now a round-trip ticket is $486. Because of price fixing and the fact that there was no competition, that was pretty consistent across all of the major airlines. But now it meant the floodgates were open, and the average Joe could now afford to fly transcontinental, intercontinental, transatlantic, and it completely changed the name of the game. We're about 6 hours into this flight, and as you can see, some clouds are starting to form down there near the surface. We know that it's going to be raining by the time we get to London, so we'll have to keep that in mind when we start our descent. And just a few minutes ago, you saw I was getting the main fuel tanks online for engines 1 and 4. The standard procedure for these airplanes was to fly them on the auxiliary tanks, until they got to about 500 pounds, and then flip them over to the main tanks for the duration of the flight, and that's what we're doing here. Engines 2 and 3 will be flipping over here in a few more minutes. So while we got a little bit of time, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about the DC-6B that Pan Am used and why it was so important. Now, obviously, we've discussed the DC-6B in previous videos, but for Pan Am, it was different. When Pan Am took delivery of these airplanes in 1952, they actually had a system on board that let them change the configurations of the cabins on the fly, to coin a phrase. The floor and the seats were all on rollers, and they could essentially roll out and roll in what they needed for any given flight or any given time, even between days, even between flights, because it only took about 90 minutes altogether to make it happen. Now, as you saw in the opening, the cabin configuration for this model here that PMDG has was a 2x2 configuration. That was what Pan Am called the President class, which was the old-fashioned first-class offering that most airlines at the time had. Now, the Rainbow class had a third seat installed on the starboard side of the airplane. So if you're looking down the row from the cockpit, the left side would have had a third seat in right there where the aisle was. This is how they were able to cram 86 people into these airplanes. And this is really what kind of gave Pan Am the edge, because their competitors in the Lockheed Constellations could only carry 65 people. So now you were carrying more people per plane load and able to make more money per flight. And this is really the vision that Juan Trippe had when he first was chasing after the tourist class in 45. As many people as possible in the airplane, and with essentially bigger airplanes. And this is something that would be continued into the jet age when the 707 was released. And so you've got a state-of-the-art DC-6, or the Super 6 Clipper, as they were called for Pan Am, using a state-of-the-art seat configuration system. That meant that Pan Am they were basically the leader when it came to international travel, which is why they were the unofficial flag carrier for the United States. Now, obviously, the U.S. did not have a national airline, and you could argue that American Airlines would have probably been in that category, but Pan Am, they did it better, and this is part of the reason why. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to Pan Am, but that can be its own video. Braniff, in our last episode, we could pretty much cover in a few minutes, but Pan Am, we would need a whole new video for that. So I'll save them for another time. bottom dropped right out on the end of that landing there. The winds are coming right down the runway too, but I guess they're a little bit variable because we were fighting it the whole way in, as I'm sure you probably saw. Well, with the weather the way it is and the rain and whatnot, I'm not really all that surprised. But we made it. We're finally here. Welcome to London. Let's get this thing off the runway into the gate, and we'll close it out. See you guys in a minute. Well, folks, that's going to do it for Pan Am Flight 70, the Rainbow today. Thank you so much for joining me on this one. I had so much fun with it, and it's really rewarding to me to kind of explore these aspects of history that we don't really talk about all that much. And this one was just, I had a great time, so thank you so much. I know that we've seen a lot of the DC-6 lately, and I just have so much fun with it, but we'll try to shake it up here in the future. I also want to apologize in advance for the inconsistent upload schedule that I've had as of late. These last couple of weeks have been, well, they've been rough, to say the least. I'm hoping to bounce back without too much trouble and get back to some kind of regularity with this. But in the meantime, thank you so very much for your patience, and I hope that you enjoy this as much as I do. That will do it for us today. If you do enjoy what I do, make sure that you like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I'm hoping to do more stuff with this in the future, obviously, and I do want to explore Pan Am with a little bit more in depth, and we'll find a way to do that to make it interesting, I think. So for now, I think that'll be it from London, England. My name is Saoirse the Vixen. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.